Yes. So anyway, so last class, so you are able to see the screen, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So last class, so we have started our hazard, the analysis. Okay. So I have told you, like you see, what is the problem in design and other things also. So the main, why we have to do this, all this seismic hazard analysis? What is the main thing here? The essence. See, what is the main purpose? Why this is a problem now? So you may have all the data, okay, for all the earthquakes, everything you may be having, but still you have a serious problem, in this hazard. Whether it is United States or Japan or India, everywhere this is a problem. Why? What is the reason? If you have good amount of data, also like NGA West 2, you would have seen, right? Huge amounts of data sets are there. Like in India, we don't have much data, but if you have all collected all the data, say, still your problem is solved.
No, sir.
No, what is the problem? What is the main most important thing?
Future is uncertain.
Which one?
Future is uncertain.
Future. So that is the most important thing. So you may have collected all data. You may have data for 9 magnitude. You may have data, all everything information may be there. But the unfortunate thing, the design, you want the safety to be in the future. That is the most important thing. Why all this problem comes. Okay. So this is why you see you require a hazard analysis and other things are there. I also told you, like in olden days. Okay, like maybe now also not olden days. Now also people are using. So generally, what they do is, you see, you take one magnitude, one distance, you assume that magnitude distance are not uncertain. Like you see, you assume some worst scenario or something like that, and then you pick up from the GMP, say mean value, mean plus sigma, 1.65 times sigma, 84 percentile, 68 or 75, you followed, right? 95 percentile, and then you see you do the design. That was how it has been found out. But now the thing is, now the subject is very well advanced. So magnitude, distance are random variables, so you can do this hazard, the curves. So this is essence of this is the probabilistic seismic hazard analysis. So PSHA, the output of PSHA is the seismic hazard curve. So now what is the design curve for any city in India? What is the design value? So right now IS code gives you one number. But when you do probabilistic seismic hazard analysis, what do we give for each city? Like you say Bombay or Delhi, say what do we give? What is the design value?
It varies depending on the risk.
So the design value will be 0 to 0.9 or 1G or 1.2, something like that only. So Delhi also you can design for any value. Chennai also you will have 0 to 2G or 3G or something. You see, we will give these type of curves. But the most important thing is we will also will specify the risk level actual. Okay. So like you see, if you are designing for 0.1G, say maybe at Delhi, you may be taking more risk. But if you are designing for 0.1 in Chennai, say maybe you are taking less risk kind of a thing. So these are extra additional information which is given in this probabilistic analysis, and these type of curves are mandatory, are very important for insurance companies. Okay, as I also told you, like you see, the building in abroad, everything is insured. Okay, the houses for earthquake, everything insurance is there. Now in India also, banks are forcing us to do this insurances. So if you do, so there is risk is covered by the insurance. So this information is required for an insurance company. Even now also in our engineering also, right, performance based seismic design, they say, right, they will specify several levels. Like you see, recurring earthquake, I think I showed you long back also, frequently occurring earthquake, you should have minor damage. If it is a rare earthquake, it should not collapse, you see. So you have a performance based things also. So there also they want this not one design value, they would like to have a design value for several of these numbers itself. Okay, so that is why this PSHA becomes very important. So but the only thing, as I already told you, to do this PSHA, so you should know the probability theory. Okay, so last class, I have already, if you remember, right, we have discussed, of course not in great detail, some briefly, I have told you this probability theory also. Okay, now what is the definition of probability? What is the definition we are using? Which definition we are using for probability theory?
Axiomatic definition.
Axiomatic definition. So you have some 3 axioms are there. So you followed it. It is same as length, area, or something like that. Okay. So this is our probability. So sample space, event space, then this one. But what do we do in reality? Like you see, what's the problem with this definition, or with this representation? Say, what's the main problem?
The sample space are different for different.
Sample spaces are different. Sometimes sample spaces may not be even numbers also, or they may be only 1 2 3 4 5 6. There is no 1.2. So that problem comes to make it uniform. Say, so we define this concept of random variable. Okay. So this is the most important thing in probability theory. So random variable is, it is not, people, whenever somebody asks what is a random variable, so everybody says it is a random quantity. No, it's not a random quantity. Random variable definition is perfectly designed. It is not random definition. So it is just a transformation from sample space to real line. So the advantage is all the sample spaces can be to real line, and once everything comes to real line, say, so the sample space for any problem will be minus infinity to infinity only. So you can do all kinds of calculations. Okay. Then we also define probability distribution function also. It is defined less than or equal to x or something like that. Then we also define the density function also, which is a derivative. Okay. Both are same only. Whichever thing you use, you follow it is same, but the densities, you have some advantage actually. Okay, like a visual, some nice things will be there. So like for normal distribution, say, the distribution function will be like this. Okay, minus infinity to infinity, and it starts from 0 and it goes to 1, the normal distribution. Suppose if you take log normal also, or exponential distribution, say, exponential distribution also, the distribution function will be always 0 1, always the function will be like that. But if you take its derivative, say, then you will get very, very nice the shape like this, normal distribution, exponential, say, it will be something like this. So the figure, the visually for our eyes, say, you can easily identify looking at the density function what type of random variable it is, but the distribution function, you will not be able to identify. So this is one way. Okay, so density or distribution. So this is what we said. So px of x or small px of x. So this is also another way. And another thing also, what to do is movements. Okay, this also we use. Movements are nothing but expectation operators, we say, x to the power of n, and we have even central movements also, that is after subtracting the mean value. So this also one way. So all of you would have studied, like, first central movement is 0. Here the first movement is mean actually. Okay. Second movement is some square RMS value or something like that also. Maybe you see people use square or something like that. Now here the first central movement, say, is 0. Second central movement will give you variance. Third, you do, so you have to do some normalization. So skewness, kurtosis, and then you see the higher are several movements are possible. Okay, so that is also one way to describe a random variable. Okay, so there are several ways to describe a random variable. Now sometimes we can have joint random variable also. Okay, when there are two random variables are there, say, like for example in our case, magnitude, distance, say, so there are two random variables there. So if you're having two random variables, say, like you see two different thing, like for example you see Young's modulus, then moment of inertia, so both of them are random variable. Okay, deflection, you see p square, that ei or whatever you have. So our load and this one, some 2 or 3 are random, say. So they may have something common also, this randomness. So then if they are joint, that's what we say. So that is characterized by this, you see, distribution function. So PMR, this is what we call as the joint random variables. You can also use the density function also. Okay, both are same. So joint density or the joint distribution, you see, so we use them. So joint density function of magnitude, distance, or joint distribution. So it is basically a surface. Okay, so for one-dimensional random variable it is a curve, but when you're having 2D, say, it becomes a surface. Then 3D means it is a little bit you followed, right? Higher dimension, 3 dimensions, will all those things will come into picture actually. Okay, so this is a very important thing. Now here also, suppose if you assume independence, Okay, so this is a very important thing. So if you assume that independence, like you see M and R are independent random variables, they don't depend on each other. Okay, and now in seismologies, in our earthquake engineering, M magnitude, distance, they are two random variables that they depend on each other, or they are independent. See, like for example, I showed you, right, this, what is it? This Gujarat earthquake, okay? And now you, by looking at the figure, you tell me. So distance means it is controlled by where the fault is located, okay? Magnitude is also depending on the, of course, this one. So looking at this figure, you tell me whether magnitude and distance are dependent or independent. Yes. Occurrence of earthquake depends on distance.
No, they are independent.
They are independent random variables. Okay, but of course, in the GMPs, when you look from the data point of view, we had a issue. Okay, because large magnitudes will be felt up to large distance. Small magnitudes will felt up to small distance. There you may have some kind of a dependent. That's why we are using that NLM fit, or that grouped kind of a thing. But physically speaking, from the physics point of view, earthquakes are independent, and it can occur on any fault. Like for this Gujarat side, it can occur on marginal fault, 6 magnitude maker, or it doesn't depend. Like this fault only will produce 6, that fault only will produce 7. It's not possible actually. Okay, so of course they may be dependent. Sometimes a dependent will be there. Like for example, if you have a fault, say, like for example. We all know, right? If I have a fault, let us say its length is only 1 kilometer, small fault is there. Yeah. So, and you are having a fault which has length 1,000 kilometers. Yeah. Now, if I ask a question, say 9 magnitude will occur on which fault? 1 kilometer fault, can 9 magnitude can occur on this fault?
No.
Yeah, but 1,000 kilometer fault means? Yeah. So 1,000 kilometer, if it is length of the, because we told, right, if you want large magnitudes, rupture length and other things also will increase basically. Okay, so if we have a so now you are able to hear.
Yes, sir.
I think some problem here with our Wi-Fi. Okay. So anyway, so the maximum magnitude set that may depend on the length of the fault and others. But in the occurrence of other magnitudes, you see, if I have 1,000 kilometer, 2 faults are there, say, then one fault may not influence you follow, right? So there may be dependence, maybe there are, but theoretically speaking, you follow, right? So for simplicity, say the joint density is very, very difficult to construct also. So what we assume is you follow, right? They are independent of each other. So if they are independent, say, so then their joint density function can be written as a product of these two things itself. So this is valid, you follow, right? So that means if things are independent, say if you want to construct 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional thing, which is very difficult, but you can, so if you know the 1-dimensional function, like 1D function of magnitude, then the 1-dimensional density function for distance, you just multiply these two, say you will get its joint density function also. Okay, so of course in reality, if you ask that magnitude, distance, they are independent or dependent, it is a very difficult thing to talk, because one fault may influence so many other aspects are there. But generally you followed it, if you assume them to be independent of each other, say, then it makes our life easy, because constructing a 2-dimensional thing is very complex. But if you assume them to be independent, then you can break down into product of several things, and you can do the calculations very easily. Okay, so this is also one very important thing one should know, the joint random variables also. Okay, and now let us see what are the random variables which are encountered in seismic hazard. Okay, what is there are so many random variables are there commonly encountered, say, in seismic hazard. Okay. So if you see, so the common things, what we see is the commonly encountered random, not only in hazard, even in many places, say. So they are basically, you see, the Bernoulli random variable. Okay, so these, and then binomial. So this is the, then we have, you see, this geometric random variable. Okay, so these are some of the things. Of course, normal other things also will come to this one. So these are some of the random variables which are commonly encountered, or the simplest, you see, of the random variables. So it is like, for example, say, like, you see, if I have a design value, okay, or a magnitude, you can do for any this itself. Okay, so if I have a design value, say, as some, you see, 0.36 G, and my lifetime of my structure, say, is 15 years. Okay, so now we will be interested to find out, you see, like, you see, what is the probability, say. Okay, so what is the probability, the design value gets exceeded in a given year. Okay, in a given year. So you see, you will be interested to know, like, you say, I have designed my structures, and now in this year, what is the probability that, you see, in a given you followed it year itself. So like this, you see, you can ask many questions also, or you see, how many times, you say. Okay, so how many times, you see, the design value gets exceeded. Gets exceeded, you see, during the lifetime. Okay, so during the lifetime of the structure. So this also you will be interested, like, you see, if you are constructing a new building in Ahmedabad, say, okay, so you may ask, like, you see, if I design for 0.36 G, say, how many times it may get exceeded, or in a given year, say. So this you may be interested, or you can ask something like when the design value, say, will get exceeded. So when the design value, gets exceeded for the first time. Okay, so for the first time. So like this, you can ask several questions and other things also, but these are the some of the common things you followed, right? We generally ask, when you do this in the hazard analysis. So this problem is, exactly same as, you see, a coin, when you are tossing a coin problem, say. Okay, so in tossing a coin problem, we all know that, we are having our sample space is only head and tail. So two outcomes are there: success, failure, or whatever yes no kind of a thing. It is a very simplest of all the random variables. Okay, now let us say probability of success, or whatever, say, let us say head is some p, so probability of tail will be, you see, 1 minus p. Okay, so now here also you can ask, like, you see, what is the probability of getting head in when I toss a coin once. Okay, for once, if I toss a coin, say, like, you see, one time, what is the probability that it may get this one. So like that, you see, it comes. So this you followed it in a given year, say. So the first question, so this is basically, it is defined by this Bernoulli random variable. Like, you see, what is the probability of getting head in a, if I toss a coin once. Okay, now the second one, say, like, you see, how many times, you see, the design value gets exceeded, or it is something like how many times. If I toss a coin for 50 times, like lifetime of my structure, say, 50 times I toss a coin, I would like to find out how many times, I will get head, probability of getting 1 head, 2 head, 3 head, 4 head, you followed it, 5 head kind of a thing. So this problem is same as our second one. So this is how the binomial random variable comes. Okay, now the third one, say, it is something like when I have tossing a coin for 50 times or whatever, say. So when I will see the head for the first time, like maybe the first time I will get tail, 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 like that. In the fourth time, when I toss a coin, say, then I will see the head for the first time, like that, you see. So this question comes. So this question is, this gives rise to geometric, the random variable you followed. So these are the three random variables which many times, they in many areas also you will encounter. So the first one is a Bernoulli random variable. Okay, so it's a density function and others, is anyway a probability of success or probability that structure will fail. Okay, so if it is a P, say probability of not getting exceeded, it will be simply, you see, 1 minus P itself. So your structure, the design value may get exceeded or it may not get exceeded. So it is like, two outcomes only, head and tail. So if the probability if it gets exceeded, if it is P, then not getting exceeded is will be simply, you see, 1 minus P itself. Okay, so this is how the first one. Now the second one is, you see, the binomial random variable. So this you can write through that binomial, you would have studied all those things also. So probability is x is equal to k. So it will get exceeded 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times and other things. So this you can write as nck. So p to the power of k, 1 minus p to the power of k. So k is, the number of times, say. So the value gets exceeded. So this is our binomial random variable. Now the third one, say, is the geometric random variable. So here we are interested in when I will see the fed head for the first time. See, like for example, see, if I write probability of x is equal to k, that means, I am observing the head for the first time, in the kth time. So we are observing the head for the in the kth time. I have got the first time head, or in the 50 years lifetime, say, during the kth life actual or the kth year, my value got exceeded. Okay, so suppose let us say in the 10th time my value got exceeded, say, that means less than 10. What is the meaning? Yeah, so I have you followed, right? Tossed a coin 10 times. I have seen the head for ninth time. When I'm tossing a coin, I have seen the head for the first time during the 9th trial. Okay, that means in the first 8 trials, what you have seen?
Tails.
So what is the probability of tail? That means a success or whatever. So it means you followed it 1 by 1 minus p itself. So the first time 1 minus p, second time also 1 minus p, like that it goes. K minus 1 times I have 1 minus p. During the kth times I have seen the head act. That is a success. So this you can write as 1 minus p k minus 1 times p. So this is what you see, the geometric, the random variable. So the probability of seeing, the design value gets exceeded for the first time in the 10th trial, 3rd trial, 4th trial, 5th trial also, you will be interested to compute these numbers itself. So this geometric random variable, say, okay, so you can, so it's a density function, if you want to write, so it's very important. So the probability distribution, say, function. So we know this px of x is, so p x is less than or equal to x itself. Okay, so the p x greater than k, say. Okay, that means x is more than kth time. That means, so x is equal to k is 1 minus p to the power of k minus 1 into p. Now let us say I am seeing the head, say, more than k. Okay, that is a more than k means, so that means all the values up to k will be now. So I'm seeing a head, the probability of getting a head greater than k. That means what does it tells you? All the k times what you have seen then. See, suppose k is 10, say. So probability that I will see the head for the first time more than 10 trials. Okay, that means, 11th trial I will see the head. So that means all the 10 trials you have seen. Trials. And that means it's 1 minus p into 1 minus p into 1 minus p. So this is 1 minus p to the power of k. So that means, you see, the probability density distribution function. That means x less than or equal to x. So this is 1 minus p, x greater than k, because anyway it has to come to 1. So this means 1 minus p whole to the power of k. So this is the probability, the distribution function for the geometric, the random variable. And if you try to find out its mean value, say, very interesting thing, you will get the mean value of a geometric random variable, that is expectation of k. Okay, so you have to do this binomial thing. So j is equal to 1 to infinity, so 1 minus p j minus 1 into p. So if you try to find out the mean value, this turns out to be 1 by p itself. Actually, very, very important concept. What is p? What is p?
Probability of head.
Probability of head or probability of success or probability of failure, you follow it, you can see. So what does it tells you? So this 1 by p, that is a reciprocal of the probability. See, probability is also like a frequency. So what is the reciprocal of frequency? Time period. So now probability is also frequency only. What is the reciprocal of probability? Reciprocal of frequency is a time period, but reciprocal of probability is what do we call this one?
Return.
Return period. Okay, so this is a very, very important concept. So this return period concept is whatever you see in all the probability theory. So it comes from the geometric random variable, where p is anyway we are defining as is the probability of exceedance. So design value probability of exceedance of probability exceedance. Okay, let me write this. Oh, sorry. Probability of exceedance. The design value. So this is how we say the geometric random variable comes. Then the concept of return period so that comes like this. So if somebody says that return period is 1,000 years, so what is it's a probability of exceedance? So if somebody says my return period is 1,000 years, if he's telling okay, so what is the reciprocal of what is the probability of exceedance? 10 to the power of -3. Okay, so like that you can easily find out these numbers also. So that is how the return period concept comes into picture from the geometric random variable. Now here one more interesting thing with these three random variables is as n tends to infinity, that means your design life okay, or the design the life becomes very, very large, or maybe if you are looking for small see, like now what is the design life when I'm saying 50 years, okay, but now 50 years if I talk in terms of months, what happens? Now see, if I talk in terms of month, what happens to this design life? 15 to 12 actual. Okay, so now so now let us say in a year, I am having year, then I have the probability of exceedance in a year basically. Now when I come to months level, what happens to probability that my structure will fail monthly wise actual. Now what happens to the probability when the when the duration is increasing? So now here you are having 50 years. Now this has become 50 into 12 actual. Okay, some 600 has come. So now what happens to this probability of exceedance? See, it is like your exposure time. So when you are talking years, your structure, you are talking exposure of your structure for complete year itself. When you are talking month, so you are looking for the exposure time, only for some 1 month only, very short duration. So what happens to this probability of exceedance? See, when I look probability of exceedance in a year or probability of exceedance in a given month actual, so which one will be higher, which one will be smaller?
Month will be smaller.
Obviously, because you are observing the structure for very small duration actual. So month will be small. Now if I take days, then what happens? Say I want to find out what is the probability that my building will fail tomorrow, a day after tomorrow. Like that, if I ask this question, say what will be the probability?
Even small.
Even obvious, right? See, what is the probability that your structure, your house will fail tomorrow? Say, you know, right? The probability is very, very small. But if you ask the question, so what is the probability that your structure will fail in a year? Say, then your duration is increasing. So obviously, probability of failure also will obviously increase. Actual. So this, so what is happening is as n, so that is the n gets increased. Say, okay. Just 1 second. Hello. క్లాస్లో అమలు చేస్తాను అమలానికి ఇచ్చాను కూడా 50 ఎండ్ సెమ్ 25 ఒక మిడ్ సెమ్ ఇంకో 25 అసైన్మెంట్స్ ఓకేనా okay, I'm sorry. Okay, now you see, so now we have so what is happening here? So now your number of intervals say, so if you are observing in yearly this one, so your what is happening to the probability? So as n tends to infinity, as intervals are becoming very, very small, say Okay, if the intervals are very small. Now what happens now? So your probability of exceedance is what is happening to your probability?
Tends to 0.
Tends to 0. So that means is as n tends to infinity. N tends to infinity means it is not that you are observing 1 lakh years or 1 lakh. That not like that. You should not interpret like that. Okay. So n means is the number of intervals. Now we are talking yearly. You can talk daily or you can talk hourly also. Like you see, what is the probability that my structure will fail next hour? Say. Then the probability automatically you see it keeps on decreasing. So as n tends to infinity, p tends to 0 actually. But n times p say this goes to some kind of a constant because one is going to infinity, another one is going to 0. So np goes to a constant. Okay, so this is a very important thing. So limit. So n tends to infinity, p tends to 0, and n times p say it goes to some kind of a constant. So all your random variable, that is your binomial random variable, whatever you are having. Okay, so this goes to what random variable? Any of you remember? When the number of intervals are becoming large, probability is decreasing, and n times p is some kind of a constant if it is going, say. What happens to binomial random variable?
Poisson distribution.
So it goes to Poisson random variable. Okay, the Poisson distribution comes into picture. You followed? And the Poisson random variable, say, right? The p x is equal to k. Okay, so this is e to the power of minus lambda t to the power of k by k factorial. Okay, so where lambda is a rate of the exceedance. So rate of exceedance is a rate of occurrence or whatever, or something. I think they write rate of occurrence, maybe. Sorry. So rate of occurrence, you see, in that, like that, you see, they write. So this automatically, this is a Poisson random variable comes this one. Now the same concept, say, if you do for geometric random variable also, okay, the same limits. So limit, n tends to infinity, p tends to 0, np tends to some kind of a constant, say. So geometric random variable goes to, which random variable? Binomial goes to Poisson. Geometric goes to
Exponential.
Exponential random variable. Okay, you can derive all these things. They are available in the classical, you see, the probability textbooks. Okay, so pt of t, the probability density function, say lambda e to the power of minus lambda t, and it's a probability distribution function, say is 1 minus e to the power of minus lambda t, and the mean value, say, of the exponential random variable. What will be the mean value of exponential random variable? Because it has come from geometric only. For geometric random variable, mean was 1 by p. You followed, right? Now in a similar fashion, so for exponential random variable, so the mean value, it turns out to be 1 by lambda, where lambda is, you followed it, the rate of occurrence or whatever, the things will be there. So what is the mean of this one? So what do we call this? Exponential random variable also. So this mean we call as what it is? Same. Exponential comes from geometric random variable. So mean value of geometric random variable is anyway 1 by p. So what is 1 by p? So for exponential also it is same. So this also, you see, we call as, you see, the return period. Sometimes one word is used in probability theory, recurrence period also. This also sometimes, people use recurrence period also to tell about 1 by lambda, but the concept is the same. Okay, both of them are like this. So this is how you say. So these are the random variables you followed, right? We try use in our hazard analysis also. But one thing you have to very keep in your mind is, all the assumptions, binomial, Poisson, or whatever, they are all assuming things to be independent actually. Okay, this is the most important thing. Okay, is the whole concept actually the independent. So all the events are independent. Like for example, say if I'm talking 50 years, the lifetime, and if I'm looking the structure failure, say, so if I divide into first year, second year, third year, fourth year, up to 50th years, the probability that the structure will fail in the first year and the probability that my structure will fail in the second year. So these are all of them are independent basically. So that is the assumption you followed, right? That is, let us say this year structure got, failure or something. So that doesn't influence the structural failure next year. So we are assuming that all the events are all independent, the events. So assuming is independent only, that how it is a Poisson, then geometric random variable, exponential random variable, all of them comes. Like you say, this year doesn't influence, next year. All the things are independent of each other. So that is, the most important thing in this random variables. Okay, the stochastic independence. So now then we have normal random variable also we use in our hazard analysis. Normal random variable I will not go into detail. Okay, all of you would have studied from your BTech itself, like where normal random variable comes, how this random variable comes in nature. See how this comes in nature. Where do you observe normal random variable? No, normal random variable comes where? How does it comes? In nature. Suppose if we are having several random variables, they may be complicated. But if I sum up all of them, what happens to its distribution? See, like I'm having several. We also discussed, right, during our the regression analysis. In linear regression, what is the assumption? See, that linear regression analysis, y is equal to mx plus c, or a1 x1 plus a2 x2 or a3 x3, say. What is the fundamental assumption? Since you are adding several random variables, what happens to y?
Converges to a normal random.
It goes to a normal distribution. Okay, this is based on which theorem?
Central limit.
Central limit theorem.
So this is central limit theorem. Okay, so normal random variable you followed it. It comes automatically in nature when you are summing up several random variables. Now similarly we have log normal also. This also we use in our hazard analysis. Anyway, log normal, both of them are same. They are related to one another only. It's very easy. And now log normal random variable comes due to multiplication. X1, x2, x3, like that. If you multiply several random variables, say, so then this becomes the log normal. And if you take log y, say, then log y will be same as log x1 plus log x2 plus log x3 dash up to log the xn itself. So it is both of them are one side sum. If you multiply, say, then if you take logarithm, automatically the log normal random variable also comes into picture. Okay, so these are all straightforward kind of a thing. So now this is how you see all these random variables comes into picture. So now apart from this one, so now let us see our hazard analysis. How do we calculate all these numbers? Okay. So now let us see our PSHA. So now in our hazard analysis, what is that we are interested is we are interested in calculating these numbers. So we want to find out probability, say y greater than y star. Y greater than y star. So this is what we are interested. So where this y star, say, is my design value. You followed. So that is what we are interested here. So we want to find out, say, okay, so now what is the probability that my design value gets exceeded? Design value is getting exceeded. So this is what we are interested. Okay, so this is what you followed it. So we are interested in to find this in probabilistic hazard analysis. So my design value, say, it can be PGA, it can be spectral acceleration, or it can be PGV. It can be any of those the ground motion parameters. Okay, and sometimes the same thing if you want to talk about structures, say the failure of a structure or something. So then obviously you followed it. You will talk about fragility curves, vulnerability curves, losses, and other things also comes into picture. Okay. So now, so our so the seismic hazard analysis. So we would like to find out, so the objective of my analysis is, like this. So to find out P y greater than y star, the probability of my design value getting exceeded. Okay, exceedance probability. in structural lifetime. You followed. So this is what you see we are interested. Okay. So now so this is what you see the seismic as that thing. Now here so as I already told you, y can be anything or whatever can be there. So probability is say. So now here so my spectral acceleration or anything is possible is greater than y star. Now so this SA whatever we are telling say this y or this PGA spectral acceleration. So these are all the random variables basically. So these are all the future values. So in future, the future spectral acceleration value or my future PGA is basically uncertain, or it is the random kind of a thing. It happens here. Now the uncertainty in spectral accelerations or in my PGA is coming from where? Why my future PGA is design value is uncertain? Now why it is uncertain? Where this randomness is coming from? Now, my future value, why it is uncertain? Now, we have discussed, right? Why it is uncertain? So where uncertainty is coming from your PGA, the next 50 years is why PGA is uncertain. Now you remember this table we discussed last class. Why it is uncertain?
Depend on combinations.
Now, so your PGA is a function of what?
Magnitude, distance.
So now magnitude and distance, and as already we have said, right? So magnitude, distance, and then of course your GMP is also regression equation. Okay, so there also you have some type of uncertainty because generally when we do regression, say you have you followed, right, that sigma also will come into picture. So basically, so we are saying that it is not a probability, it is basically a a conditional probability kind of a thing, you see, which we have. Okay, so your uncertainty says, so there are conditions, so it depends on magnitude and the distance actual. So this, if you want to write properly, say, so m r will be there, then of course you have this epsilon also, which comes from your GMP. So three uncertainties comes into picture. So it is a conditional the probability you followed. So magnitude, then a distance, and epsilon is error in your regression analysis you followed. So error in the GMP. So these are the things basically. Okay, so probability of SA, the greater than y star for given magnitude, distance, as well as this itself. So now here, so of course our GMP you followed it. We have that expression and other things. So this SA or the PGSA, we will write C1 plus C2m plus C3r plus C4 times log r plus epsilon. So this is my GMP. So now my magnitude, distance, then epsilon, say all these three things are random. That is why my future value is also random variable. So it is basically a conditional probability kind of a thing, you see, which we have here in our case. So now here also, so now if I want to find out my SSA, so the probability that my future design value will be greater than some y star. Okay, like if it may be greater than 0.1 g, say. So now what happens now? So SA greater than 0.1 g. So this if I want to find out, say. Now how do I find out? Now my SA is not a like you say a random variable. It depends on so many quantities. So it depends on magnitude, it depends on r, it depends on epsilon. Now how do I find out? Now the probability your SA depends on magnitude, it also depends on distance, and also of course it also depends on the error in your regression analysis. So how do I find out this one now? So your SA basically depends on m or epsilon kind of a thing. How to find out now? So like yesterday class I told you, right? Now what is the theorem which we have to use here?
Bayes theorem.
No, Bayes theorem is reverse. You followed, right? Now we want to find out SA greater than 0.1 g. You followed it. For all combinations you have to find out. So you have to find out from
Orthogonal.
Total probability theorem. You remember what does total probability theorem says? You know, I have events mutually exclusive, say. Now I am just drawing M and R. Epsilon also can be drawn. That is in 3D it comes. So I have magnitude, I have a distance. You follow, right? So these are the combinations, the future values. Okay. So I have these numbers. So I have all these events will be there. Now I have magnitude combinations, say. So like you see 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, then 6, 6.5 like that. Then 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 like this. You see I have a combination here. Now 0.1 G, say this value I can get for any, you know, the combination. 4 and 10 also may can give you 0.1 G, 6 and 100 also may can give you 0.1 G. So there may be, you followed it, the several combinations. Now what I'm looking for is among all these combinations, I want to find out the probability of you know, my spectral acceleration or my PGSA more than you know, this 0.1 G. So that is what you see we are interested here. Okay, so this is what I followed it. We are interested here. So now this is what we are interested here. So this to find out, so because this also may give 0.1, this also may give 0.1, this also may give, so you can have several combinations. So here you have to use this total probability theorem. So P of B, say, so this you know, I is equal to 1 to n. So P of B given AI multiplied by P of AI actually. Okay, so that is how the total probability theorem comes into picture here itself. So now here you know, so we are having what are the random variables here? So we are having, you see, 3 random variables are there: magnitude, then distance, and then error in the regression itself. So if you are having 3 random variables, so you should know it's a joint density function of the joint distribution function of this random variable. So now, as already I told you, of course things may be little bit complex in reality, but for our simplification, say we assume that magnitude and distance are independent of each other. So I can write this expression as, you know, m, and then you see PR of you know, the R itself. So my AI, this quantity, it is nothing but, you see, this density function. I can now assuming independence, say I can write you followed it as a product of, you see, the individual quantities itself. So this theorem says, so probability, you know, SA greater than Y star. Okay, so this I can write as, you know, probability. Okay, SA Y star. Of course I have to put this one, sorry. So I will have, you know, I is equal to 1 to nm. Okay, these many magnitudes. J is equal to 1 to nr. These many distances are there. These many combinations. The probability, say, okay, my SA greater than Y star. For mi for given magnitude and for given distance, okay, multiplied by from the total probability theorem, say. So I have, you know, so B given AI, P of AI. So the same expressions we are writing also. So this AI is a joint density, but since here we are assuming it to be independent, say. So M, you followed it, Mi, and then we have, you see, PR of Rj. You followed. So this is the total probability theorem, how we compute these things. So there are 3 uncertainties. So the first one, this comes from magnitude. Okay. The second one comes from the distance. And this one, you know, for given magnitude and distance, say this Y star. Okay. So this comes from you see, the normal random variable. Why we assume it to be normal? Of course, log normal only. What is a distribution of PGA from the GMP, right? What is what type of random variable is a PGA?
Log normal.
Log normal, but log PGA is
Normal.
Normal. So generally we assume it to be log normal or normal. Both of them are this itself. So this comes from the GMP. Because the regression equation also has some type of error, okay, that we have already seen. Like if I give 6 magnitude and 10 kilometer distance, say, so your PGA can be, you know, 0.1 G, you can get 0.2 G because 0.3 G because you followed it. That is a normal, you know, the density function will come. So this is how you see the hazard analysis we try to do. So now, so this is how the total probability theorem say. So you can write, you see, you can how to calculate the hazard curve. Okay, so now to do this hazard analysis, the most important thing is you should know how to compute this probability. Of course, this may be very simple, the first one, but you should know how to find out this the probability density function of magnitude, then the probability density function say for the distance. So these are the very important things itself. Okay. So now how to find out our probability density functions? Let us see these details. So they are available in the slides. Now, so if you see this one. So now we see, so this is what we told you. So many scenarios will be there. So you have to consider all distances and all effects also. Of course, site effects also, you see, if you want, you can include also. Okay. And now that's what we said. So, you know, you have primary steps are there. Okay. Like you see, identification, characterization of all the sources, seismicity. So you have to find out, you know, so this gives you probability density function for a distance. Okay. If I know the source, then probability density function, say for the magnitude. Then for each combination, say you have to find out the motions and others. Then you have to do this probability calculations. Okay, so so it characterizes uncertainty in location. So this location is related to distance. Then the frequency, say it is related to PM of M. The effect of earthquakes, that is related to your GMP. Okay, so 3 probabilities. So you multiply all of them, you will get the total probability you followed it for these different levels of ground shaking. So this is the concept behind PSHM. So now how to find out is a PR of R. So this is the most important thing. How to calculate these numbers? So now here you followed, right? So now for given fault, as already we discussed also. So there is a lot of the confusion will be there. So you can go with R hypo, R seismic some distances, R rep, RJB you follow, right? Many distances will be there. Okay. So now so for dipping faults for this one say, so these numbers will vary because R hypocentral, RJB, they will vary depending on the type of the fault also. So now anyway, so that is a problem with the distances, but generally the easiest thing is which one? Among all these distances, so what is the easiest distance?
Epicenter.
Epicenter maybe, like you see, if you see this fault map, say what is easy you can find out, So if my city is here, say you don't know the dip angle of the fault, you don't know anything about the fault, but if I know my cities, I can easily find out the closest distance or something like that. Okay, point source kind of a thing. The epicentral distance may be easy. Focal depth also is very difficult because we we have not seen like how much depth the fault goes, and dip angle, then these things becomes much complex. So now if I have a aerial source, say okay, like my site is here. Okay, so now let us say I don't know even the fault information also. So like now if I want to find out the probability function for the distance, say if it is a circular type of sources. Okay, now how do we find out the circular type of the sources? So earthquake can occur any place. So it can occur any place inside this radius. So P, the distance R less than or equal to R 10 kilometers. Say that means you draw a circle, you followed a 10 kilometer. Then this is the overall, that is 100 kilometer. That is the overall the circular source. So this example is something like we have a circular source. So we don't have any fault, but we have a circular source, and earthquake can occur at any place in this circular source also. It can occur here, or it can occur here, it can occur here, it can occur here. There is no information on the faults. So this is the easiest thing. So no information on the faults, you don't have any information. So just you have to do this calculations. And now we all know that if an earthquake occurs more than 100 kilometer, you see there will be no damage, or maybe as a structural engineer say, so I am not interested in this type of the distances are more than 100 itself say. Now if I want to find out the probability distribution function, you see it's very easy. So the area of the circle, say with radius 100, this is the maximum thing you have. Now you find out area of a circle with radius R actually. So pi R square, pi 100 square if you take. So this is my probability, the distribution function you see for the distance. So this can be used for you see the circular, the sources when you don't have any information about the fault say, you can calculate from this expression. So it looks like this. So this is the distribution function. Okay, so everything starts with 0 and up to 100 say, it automatically keeps on increasing, and then suddenly you follow followed, right? It will be, you know, some value 0.02 or whatever you have, and then after that you see no earth, we are not interested in more than 100, so automatically see we are not interested. So this is the I think, sorry, this is the density function. Okay, this is a density function we are, they are showing here. So after this it is 0. You followed, so it comes back to 0. But the distribution function, say, which is nothing but, you know, the integral of this density, or if you know the distribution, so the derivative of that will give you the density. That's why r by 5000. So it is a linear kind of a graph, you see, which we have got. Now fr of r, say, you can plot this expression here. So it starts with 0. Before that it goes from minus infinity to infinity, but here it is all 0. Then it goes up to 100 kilometer, it reaches 1, then it remains, you follow, right, the constant kind of a thing, and you have something like you know, quadratic kind of a distribution function. So this is how the distribution function, density function, looks for circular sources. So this was used long back. See, in the olden days, say, you know, like 30 years or 40 years back, you know, we don't have any information on the faults. You know, these faults was not known actually. At many, of course, important faults was very well known, like in Himalaya and other places. But in the peninsular India or many places, say, the, you know, we don't know. Now also the fault maps are not you know, that accurate actually. They mention a scale, right, 1:1 million or something like that, you know. And there are many cases also. Which we have seen, like you see, earthquakes are occurring, but there is no fault actually nearby. You followed it. There is no fault. There is no important fault near the thing, but earthquakes are occurring. Like if you see the Kilari earthquake or Latur earthquake, say, if you see the fault map, you know, if you see, there are no faults in that region, but Latur earthquake has occurred, you know, 6.5 magnitude or something. But you know, which fault was responsible for this? You know, it's very difficult to, you see, identify these kinds of things. So in olden days, what people used to see is, you know, they used to assume that, like for example, Ahmedabad, so they assume that earthquake can occur here also, earthquake can occur here also, earthquake can occur here. It's not that earthquakes will occur only on faults. So wherever there is no fault is not there also, earthquakes can occur. Like you see, any point surrounding your site, earthquake can occur at any point. So like this, you know, people used to calculate actually in the olden days. It's a very simple, the circular source. So the whole region surrounding your site itself is seismically active. You followed. So this was the concept, you know, which was used in the olden days. But nowadays, you know, because we have got some fault information, so we go with the faults itself. So like for example, my site is here, say I have a fault here. Okay, and now what do we assume? So now what will be the circular source means? The whole region around your site is active region. Earthquake can occur here, earthquake can occur here, earthquake can occur here, anywhere earthquake can occur. But if I have a fault information, say now where earthquake will occur? No. No. So where earthquake will occur now? No.
On the fault.
On the fault itself. Okay, so now you followed, right? So what happens is, you know, so now you are, so this thing is in not possible. So the distances you followed, right, only, you know, this earthquake can occur here, 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 here only. You followed, right? So the density function is different. But if you don't have reliable information on the faults, then you assume that anything is possible and then simply take it also. So this was one of the classical or the old things, you know, which now also people are using, even you see in peninsular India and many places, you know, where you don't have rigorous information about the faults. Okay. Yeah. So like this also came. So this came later. You followed it. Like you say, now my site is here. I have a fault here. So this is my fault. You followed. So this is my fault. And now I have to find out the distance actually, the probability density function. Now in the olden days or whatever, we just assume that the earthquakes are all point sources. This also was one more thing we used to do, a point source, which means, you know, earthquakes are all point sources, you know, they are not finite sources or something like that we used to have. And now what we do is, now I have to find out the probability density function of distance actually. Okay, so if it is a straight fault, it is perfectly perpendicular to my site, say. So now if it is r, so you know, this is a 10 kilometer, so the minimum distance actually is a 10 kilometer. And if I have a point here, say, I can easily find out that right angle, you know, square root of r square minus a 10 square, this distance is there. So I can find out the probability, say. So the length of the fault is within the distance r by total length of the fault itself. So this is my, you know, the cumulative distribution function for a fault which is at 90 degrees, exactly right angle, to my site itself. So this is a distribution function. So the minimum value is a 10. Okay, less than 10, it is not possible because the fault distance itself, minimum distance itself is 10. So this is 0, and the maximum distance is a. So maximum distance is constrained by the length of the fault, that is 50 kilometer or whatever you see we have. So 10 to 51 say. So this is my distribution function, and if it is more than 51 say, so the distribution function comes to 1. So the derivative of this distribution will give me the density function. So if I differentiate, I will get this expression. You follow, 10 to 51, otherwise it is 0. So this is the distribution and the density function. You can see here 10 to 50, this one, and this is the distribution function. Now what is your comment on this one? What is your comment? The density function. Now, what is your comment right here? You see? Now, what is the probability here, right? Which probability is very high for what distance?
At 10 kilometers.
Why? 50 kilometer you followed, right? The probability distribution was like this. Now, when it is a circular source, say how the density function was looking like. Where the probability was high.
At 100 kilometers.
At far away. Why it is increasing at 100 kilometer? Because if you take distance more, say what happens, it is depending on the area, right? So it is something like like the exposure time I told, right? 50 years monthly, daily. If you are going, you follow, right, then the probability decreases as you are increasing, say from hourly to yearly, say then probability of observing earthquake will be higher. So if the region is big, say thus now here you are measuring probability that my earthquake will occur in 100 kilometer around my site, say it will be very high compared to probability of earthquake occurring 10 kilometer around my site itself. So it was like a linear increase was there. But now if you are having a fault, say, so you will get you followed it. The most important thing was, you see, nearby distances, it's very high, but far away, say. So this graph, it goes something like this. So this is also, very you followed, right? It was widely used and other things has been there. But right now what we do is, so this also we try to do, nowadays, rupture. So this also becomes a problem. So nowadays faults are not points or lines or something. So the faults will have a length as well as width also. You followed. So this also is a possible. So then how to find out the distances actually. So what people used to do right now, what we do right here is, you divide, say if you have a fault into several small you followed, right, the regions, and you find out a distance from your site to all these possible small pieces, and then you just plot a histogram actually. So you will get automatically, you see, this density function, you see, from this histogram. So you find out R min, R max, and then you find out, divide all the small points, you find out, and you numerically you compute the histogram. So that is how people used to do. Now what we try to do is, they do also like this, you followed it. So if you are having a fault, say, okay, so there are several ways actually. So if there is a fault is there here, say, so now you draw several the circles, concentric circles also. So you find out what is the minimum this circle, whether it this interpolates or not, and then you length of the fault also we used to give weightages, and then we have to find out the distances also. Then aerial sources also the same concept. You divide it into several points, you find out the distance, and then you do a histogram. So nowadays the concept is nobody uses these analytical expressions. So if you have a volumetric source or aerial source or whatever you have, say, you divide them into small points. So it like 1 lakh points or 2 lakh points or something you divide. So you find out the distance from each and every point, and then you numerically compute a histogram. So that is how we try to find out. So if you have faults which are complex kind of shapes, say here also you divide them, you can small pieces you do, and then you numerically compute a histogram. So this is a concept. So like you see, what we try to do is, if I have a fault, say like the same problem. Yeah. So the same problem, okay. So if you want to find out, you see, so if I have my site is here, so this is my fault. No need to use this expression at all, okay, that is analytical. So what we do is we divide this into small pieces, the fault. Okay, 1 lakh pieces or 2 lakh or something. You divide this into small pieces and you find out the distance from each piece. So if you have 1 lakh points, say, so you will be having how many distances? No. So if I have divided it into 1 lakh pieces, I will be having
1 lakh distances.
so now 1 lakh distances you have, you compute a histogram. All of you know, right, how to compute a histogram, class interval, and you follow, right? And what's the difference between a histogram and a density function? Now, what's the difference between histogram and a density function? Both are same or different?
It is drawn for certain intervals, histogram.
No, histogram and density function are same or different? See, like if I give a data, say, like compressive strength of a concrete or whatever, if I give data, say, how do you construct the density function? What do you do in practice? See, somebody has given you the density, some values like 100 values he has given you and asked you to compute the density function. What you will do?
We group them into small intervals and plot histogram.
So the histogram itself is a density, but the area under the histogram is a number of points. Okay, but the area under probability density function is
1.
1. So to make it 1, say, so what to do, you divide the histogram by the number of data points. Okay, then automatically you will get the probability density function. So the same concept here also we use. So you divide this into small 1 lakh pieces, you compute a histograms, and then you divide by 1 lakh actual. Automatically you will get a probability density. So if you plot from this method, say, okay, this fault, that histogram also will be exactly same like this. So 10 you have. Okay, so here you will be having, you see, so 10, whatever you have said, 10 to 50, say, your histogram also will be 10 to 50. So you will have a histogram like this, more or less like this. Okay, so something you followed, right? So you will get same you followed. So something, you will get the same thing, the density function. So this, which is easy. So now this is very easy. Analytical expression is valid only suppose if a fault is a curved fault. So then how do you calculate? Suppose a fault is like this, like I have shown you, right, in Gujarat, say, that figure. If you see here, faults are, what type of a shape is this marginal fault or these faults? Now you can see some faults are curved faults also. Now how do you compute for curved fault? Analytically, you cannot find out actual. So what is the easiest way? If you have a curved fault also, so if I have my site, if my fault is a curved actual, something like this, now how do you find out the probability density function? Numerically, what is that here? So you discretize this into small pieces, some 1 lakh or 2 lakh you followed, right? The points you discretize, you find out a distance from each point, say. So you will get 1 lakh numbers. You plot a histogram actually. You followed. Then you divide by the 1 lakh, automatically you will get the density function. You followed. So that is the concept you see we use in numerically. You can calculate for any fault, say curved fault or aerial source or volumetric source or whatever. Numerically, you can calculate very easily this the histogram, the probability density function for the distance. Okay, this is how you see we calculate in our practice also, and it is very easy to write the code also numerically to find out these distances. Okay. So anyways, I will stop here. We will continue our next class, how to find out the density function for magnitude, and then this seismic hazard things. Okay. So if you have any questions, you can ask.